Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Sorry it's been so long. Right, today's video is a video showing what you can do with Faber-Castell classic pencils. Now these are student quality pencils, but out of all the cheap or cheaper versions of coloured pencils, these are the ones that I like the best. So Faber-Castell classic coloured pencils, and this is a box of 36 different colours. I'm not sure whether they do them a bigger range than that. I have got one that's 48, but I had my suspicions that there might be the same colours repeated. However, these ones come in a nice tin. I like the tins. It's a classic red tin. They have a different design on the front now, but you always know them by their red tins or red cardboard sleeves. Now this is my sketch pad. It is a A4 size, 110 grams in weight, 70 pages, and it is made by Bluekover, spelt with a K, not a C, but you can use any sketch pad. It's got a nice smooth surface to the paper. And I thought I had been videoing the beginning of this with starting with a clean page, but I hadn't. So I had already drawn this bit. So I've just drawn out a quick sketch of the face, starting with the ears and then coming down, placing the eyes and adding some construction lines to help me get the eyes at the right angle, because the cat's head was slightly at an angle. It wasn't straight on. Now I'm going to be drawing this from a photo from my iPad of my cat Lily, who sadly passed away. So this is the photo, and you can see the ears there. That's what I started drawing, and then came down and did the face, and then carried on and did the rest of her body and the background. So I'm starting off with a very pale pinky colour for the ears. Now when I start off, I do it very, very lightly, because we're going to be building up in layers, just like we do with watercolours. With coloured pencils as well, it's just as important to build up in layers. Don't think that the colour that you put down, that's it, it's not going to change, because it is, and it's going to be very subtle. Particularly at the beginning, you'll hardly see the difference in colour, but it is there, and you want to try to get a nice even tone. So just coming in with this very pale pink, and then I might add a little bit of definition, because if you see on the ears there is actually a highlight, the where the fur meets the skin, there's kind of a bit that is white, so I want to leave that. And coming in, because on the, as we're looking at it, on the right side of the ear, it's much darker, because on the left hand side of the ear, there's a lot of fur. Whereas the right hand side, you can actually see the ear itself, which is very pink. And it can be different colours on different animals, obviously different cats. It can be dark. If the hair is dark, then it won't be as pink. Or if you get the sun behind, or the light behind the animal, then the light will shine through the ears and it will be more orangey. So now I'm coming in a bit with the grey. As you saw, this is a grey cat. She's a silver tabby. We rescued her and her twin sister from the BSPCA in Bahrain, which is an animal shelter in Bahrain, a bit like the RSPCA in the UK or the SPCA in America. And her and her sister were both in the same cage, and we wanted 2 cats, and when we saw they were sisters, we just thought that was absolutely ideal for us. And that was in 2008, January 2008. So we've had them both quite a long time, and they flew back to the UK. I was back here in 2016. So they've got quite accustomed to the cold weather, but as I said, sadly, in February 2021, we lost Lily. So we just have her sister now. Right, so back to the drawing. So I'm coming in and I'm just adding the fur on the top of her head now, between the ears. And that little tool there is a sandpaper block, and it's very good for sharpening points of pencils. I bought that one in the works. I think it was £1.25 or something, really cheap. And as each piece of sandpaper becomes blocked, you just peel it off and there's another piece underneath. I've put a piece of paper there so that I don't smudge what I've already done. What I should really have done was to have started on the left hand side, as I'm right-handed, and then I wouldn't have smudged it, but I didn't for some reason. So I use a piece of paper to stop myself from smudging the bits I've already drawn, because even coloured pencil will smudge. Not as much as graphite, but it still does. And I still do use that technique if I want to kind of smooth something down. If you just rub your finger through it, then it will kind of even out and smudge out. Not, as I said, as much as with graphite, but it will give you a nice, subtle texture where you lose some of the actual pencil marks. So this ear, remember that the fur on this ear will be coming from the opposite side to the other ear, and so the left hand side of that ear, as you look at it, will be the pinker side. Just adding some more of the lines on the fur. This won't be it. You're going to come in again and again and refine it more and more. And these pencils, although they are very reasonably priced, are quite good at layering and blending together. And they give you quite an intense colour, which for student quality pencils I think is quite rare. One thing I didn't mention is that when I do an outline, I don't use graphite pencil to do the outline. I use a coloured pencil similar to the colour that I'm going to be colouring it in with, for the simple reason that if you use graphite, then you can get the dust from the graphite can muddy the colours. So please use a coloured pencil to do your outlines. You can still rub it out. Now I'm going to start drawing in the eyes, which is always the bit of a portrait that makes it come alive. It's always the bit I enjoy doing the most in portraits, and when I used to do pastel portraits, I used to leave the eyes till last because that was the bit that I enjoyed doing the most. So if I did them, then I would kind of not want to proceed so much with the rest of it. I'd get bored with it. So, but now I think I'm more disciplined and I can manage to carry on. Also, if you get the eyes wrong, then the whole picture's wrong. There is a lot of shading from the nose on this eye because the light was coming from the other side. And of course the thing that really makes it come alive is when you put the highlight in, and I do that not with pencil but with a white Posca pen, or sometimes I use a gel pen. You could also just leave the highlight with the paper colour, but that is always more difficult to do. So I do find that using these white gel pens or Posca pens, it is quite a successful way of achieving the highlight. There was also some fur, some white fur, not so much eyelash because I think her eyelashes were darker, but there was some white fur you can see just coming across the eye, and it's little things like that, if you put them in, will really make your picture come alive. So here I am adding the highlight with the Posca pen, and then just going in and refining a bit more. I probably will come back a little bit to the eyes. Now, I haven't given you the numbers of the pencils that I'm using because I thought you might be using a different set of coloured pencils. So just go with what colour seems right to you. I don't want to be so precise that you always follow exactly what I do, because it's, you know, when you do your drawing, it's your drawing, it's not my drawing. So you need to do the colours that you think it should be. And I think that if you practice, you will end up choosing the correct colours. Now coming in and doing the other eye. This eye I wasn't quite so happy with. It's slightly not the right shape. It's too big. If you look, the two eyes are not the same size. So I wasn't so happy with that eye. I think there's too much to the right of the pupil. But this is just a sketch. This is not one of my finished paintings. However, this sketch, normally when I do sketches, they take me about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. This one took me nearly 7. The coloured pencil does take a lot longer than doing a watercolour. And I did get bogged down with the detail because I love doing details. If I'd been doing a finished picture, not a sketch, I probably would have taken about 3 days over it. So probably about 3 times as long. But I would have done a lot more layers. But nearly 7 hours was quite a long time, and that is solid time because I ended up with a video that was 6 3/4 hours long. So I've managed to get it down to something like 35 minutes by speeding it up, because there's no way you'd want to watch a video for 7 hours. And I try to make my videos less than 30 minutes, but this one, as I say, has gone over, because I know that I don't like watching videos for that long. Right, coming in here and just doing the nose. Cats' noses, I always think, are really cute. And she had a very pale pink nose, whereas her sister has a much more black nose. That was one of the ways we used to tell them apart when we first had them. Also, her eyes were green and her sister's were more an amber colour, although they changed over time and they both ended up with very similar colour eyes. But their noses were always different. The shape of their faces were different as well. This cat's was much more pointed, whereas the other cat has much more of a baby face. So although the cat is just grey and white, I've added some other pale colours, like some beigey colours, creamy colours, because the fur isn't pure white on this cat. And again, the layers. So there was the beigey coloured, then I followed up with some grey. The whiskers, she has a couple of dark whiskers and the rest are white. So I will come in at the end with the Posca pen and do the whiskers. So they really won't be done until the end. Now, in order to define the lighter coloured fur on her face, I need to darken the fur underneath on her collar. I'm already getting the impression of a cat, so I'm quite pleased with that. and I'll suddenly see something, I think, oh, that needs darkening, and go back into it. Here I'm doing a little bit of the background. Again, I've put my paper there to stop myself from smudging what I've already done. I wanted to do the background just because I think it really adds something to this picture. Like she was sleeping on a patchwork quilt. So not the easiest of things to draw. And at the moment you can see the black shading on the quilt, but I carry on putting stuff over the top. So it will become a nice flat blue there. I actually didn't record that bit. Coming in again more with the fur below her face. And a little bit more, adding a bit more colour to the ears. As you do one thing, so it will change something that you've previously done. So you then have to go in and maybe darken what you've previously done. And I don't want this stripe of colour to go all the way as a solid colour. I want it to kind of fade out as it goes off to the left. So it will be darker as it goes towards the right. And of course, to get colours paler, then with colour pencil you just need to not press as hard. So do it with a more light touch. And now I'm coming in with the stripe that's above, which is a different colour blue. It's not as purpley. And have a look at, if you've got something that's striped and it's fabric, have a look, it won't be straight. You've got to get all those little curves in, and that's what gives it the impression of being fabric. All the little creases. And of course with patchwork as well, you often get the quilting, the stitching in it, which will add to the creases, the folds. And all this will give it a more three-dimensional look. You might think that the black looks quite harsh, but I do soften it down a bit. I guess if you had more sort of larger range of colours, then you might have a darker blue that you could use rather than the black. And it might start to look a bit odd at the beginning, but I assure you that once we've finished, it won't look so odd. I'm coming in with the white fabric, which is not white. It was more of a off-white, it's kind of creamy calico type colour. I'm just adding some pale grey here rather than the black as shadows. And I think one fear we tend to have is when we start out, things don't look right. And you think, oh, I've wrecked it, I've mucked it up. How am I going to rescue it? But just carry on and see what happens. I mean, sometimes you can go too far and then it doesn't kind of mend itself. But other times, you know, you can improve it. And if all else fails, you can erase coloured pencil. Not completely, it will probably leave a shadow, but sufficiently to repair something that has gone drastically wrong. I can definitely see that right eye as I look at her is too big. But I'm my own worst critic, so we are all, I'm sure, our own worst critics. So you always see the things that are wrong with something. Going down here and doing some of the other side of her body now, the right hand side as we look at it of her head coming down into her body. And if you ever get to the point where you think, oh gosh, I'm getting bored with this, I don't like doing these stripes, don't like doing this fur, then maybe it's time to take a break. Have a break and then come back fresh, because you don't want to spoil something you've already done. Now coming in here and doing a bit of the pattern on the quilt. Because having a quilt which has got patterned fabric on it just makes it more complicated, but it adds something to the finished picture. It's just little details like that that make your picture come alive. Adding the next patchwork. I don't think they were squares, I think they're triangles. Also, you need to think about the shadows as the fabric falls into its creases. See, and always going back and just adding just a tiny subtle bit more, darkening here and there. By darkening the pink in the ears, I'm actually making the white fur in the ears stand out more. And although I try not to dance around too much when I'm doing a painting, sometimes you think, oh, I noticed that that ear needs to be darkened or something needs to be darkened. And if you don't do it there and then you come back and you think, what was it that needed darkening? So sometimes it's worth dancing around. Maybe not at the beginning. More of the patchwork quilt there coming in. And this is the cream coloured part of the fabric. Now, because it's a patchwork quilt, it did have some quilting stitches within the cream bits, so I've tried to include those because they just add a little bit more texture. There's not a lot of shadow where the cat actually touches the quilt, mainly because the quilt is kind of bunched up next to her. So really the things to remember when doing pencil drawings is to build up in layers, and the fainter the layers, the more layers you can give it, I think the better your final outcome. The other thing to remember is to keep sharpening your pencils. You really do need a very fine point on your pencil to do coloured pencil well. And remember, the main thing about all of this is enjoy doing it, enjoy the process, because after all, that's why you're drawing. We're not drawing to become Michelangelos or Leonardos. We're drawing just because it's fun, and I think that is the most important thing about doing art, is you do it because it's fun. And if you're not enjoying it and it's not fun, then maybe it's not for you. More of the shadows on the actual pale cream coloured bit of the quilt. And trying to actually depict the quilting on the quilt. That's the stitches. And here the pattern on the actual fabric again. Adding that detail really just does lift your picture. And the pattern doesn't have to be totally correct, just as long as it's a reasonable facsimile of what you're seeing, giving the impression of being a patterned piece of fabric. Now coming back into the cat and doing more of her body, and she has got this paw which you can just about differentiate the fact that it's her leg. It's not actually her paw, it's her leg, or the top of her leg. So you want to kind of make sure you can tell where the leg and the body differentiate, because if not, you look like you've got a very weird and quite deformed cat. On the left, you can see that box with lots of different colours in it. Well, that is actually my shade sheet for this box of pencils. And every time I get a new box of pencils or a new box of paints, I always do a shade sheet and keep it in the box so that I know what colours I can actually achieve from that box of pencils. And my video number 105 was actually a review of these pencils. So in that video I draw an apple, an orange and a strawberry. So if you want to look back and find out more about these pencils, then you're very welcome to. I actually have the Faber-Castell Professional set of pencils, which I love using, but I think if you're just starting out, you know, the difference in price is like more than 10 times as much, and I think that these are a really good pencil, and I always give them to my students who come on my courses. I think you can get a tin like this for under £20 on Amazon. I'm not sure, I haven't looked this year. Coloured pencil is something that I find really fascinating, and it's only the last sort of few years that it's become an accepted medium for artists and not just reserved for children. And there are some amazing, amazing art pieces out there done with coloured pencils. Just coming in with the whiskers with the Posca pen, and also a few other stray little white highlights and fur hairs. And you can carry on and on and on, so you have to actually know when you've finished. So I hope you've enjoyed my video, and if you have, please consider subscribing, it's free, and also like my video and share. Thanks very much. See you next time. Bye.